All right, just finishing up the coffee in my cool mug here. Look at that. Wood Mizer orange. Oh, I don't know if it's Wood Mizer orange, but it's orange. Oh, okay. All right, I got something to show you today. So there's always this debate about to wear gloves or not wear gloves running a sawmill. Well, I'll tell you, first of all, I got my first band sawmill in January of 2011, January or February of 2011. And I started out without wearing gloves. I'm a tough jarhead, I don't need gloves. And I'd been building a cabin, and you know, I've worked woodworking off and on over the years, worked in construction, did all that. They don't wear gloves, you know. And your hands get tough. It's true, hands do get tough, but sawmill blades cut wood. Dull sawmill blades cut wood. And when I first started with the sawmill, I used to change the bands with bare hands until I cut myself a few times. Usually I'm doing a job for somebody and I'm trying to get the band changed out quickly. I'm not lollygagging around, and you know, you nick yourself once in a while. Usually not too severe, but severity is you know, a matter of perspective, I guess. If you need stitches, it's more severe, right? Well, I didn't need stitches any time I can remember, but I definitely cut myself a few times. So I said, I'm gonna wear gloves. So some argue you can't wear gloves to run the sawmill because the gloves get in the way. Do you wear oversized boots? Gloves are made to fit different hand sizes, just like boots and shirts and pants and everything else, folks. So I use leather gloves. Now these leather gloves are pretty good. These are the cheap U-line ones. They're okay. Some of them, the stitches come undone on them, but I don't know if you can see the palm of this glove very well. You may see there's a lot of scratches across the palm. Pretty good scratches, not real deep. But this one, I want you to see this. See that? That's a cut. That's a good cut. That's torn the glove, a leather glove, wide open. Okay? So what was I doing? Now the first thing that a lot of the folks that say you don't wear gloves, the first conclusion they come to when they see damage on a glove is that you are using gloves around spinning objects. Folks, come on. There are rules. It's just simple common sense rules. I was a heavy duty mechanic once in my life, for a number of years, and those rules applied then as they do now. You do not wear gloves near spinning objects. In fact, you don't put your hands near them. Now, the first thing somebody says when they hear that argument is, yes, but when I run a table saw, you don't put your hands in near it either. I have friends that have lost fingers on table saws. It happens. So what do? You have push sticks. They have guards. There are different things that you use on a table saw to prevent you putting your hand near them so that you don't lose a finger. I've had friends that literally lost their entire pinky finger because they ran it through the saw. No gloves involved. I've had friends that lost half of fingers for the same sort of thing. It happens, okay? You don't wear gloves near spinning objects, but you also don't put your hands in them either. It's like long hair. You don't lean over a running engine with long hair, because guess what can happen? Hair gets caught into a belt and pulley system, and your head's getting slammed down there too. Simple. When I was in the Marine Corps, I actually trained as a light armored vehicle mechanic. So that meant I was a recon scout with a toolbox for a few years. But the one thing you do is you take everything. You take your jewelry off. You don't have loose fitting clothing. All that kind of stuff, so that when you're near a spinning object, your shirt doesn't get caught and rip you into it, okay? It's common sense. But when you're not around spinning objects and you are around sharp objects, you wear gloves to protect your hands. Now, on the sawmill, can you run the sawmill wearing gloves? Well, folks, if you're new to my channel, I implore you, of course, to subscribe because it helps, but go back and look at the videos that I have out there. There's over 100 of them of me running a sawmill with gloves and producing good quality lumber at a high production rate. I have managed to produce lumber at 500 board feet an hour. On a slow day, 200 maybe, if it's really bad and I don't have help or whatever. But I usually average around the 300 board foot per hour range, which isn't bad. Now this mill's capable of 500, but it takes a lot of special things to get there. Nonetheless, if you're producing around 300 board feet an hour, you're cranking out the lumber. I'm doing it with gloves on. So watch those videos. You'll notice I always have a set of leather, those yellow leather gloves. I prefer the ones Costco used to sell. I tried U-line, they seem to fall apart. I've had some others. They're not as good a quality, but they work still. Those are U-line gloves. That bandsaw blade was not moving. It was shut down. All I did was I was moving flitches against the cant to saw them, and I just wanted to even them up. And when we moved it, you'll notice on my thumb here, I have a little bit of a kind of a bruise right here. A little bit of a kind of a little red mark right there. It's like a little bruise, and it looks like there's just the very slightest little puncture of the skin, just very slight. So how did that happen? Let's get my old Jarheads mug out here before the coffee goes cold. Well, so I'm adjusting those flitches. They were 18-foot flitches, and so we're pushing them down the deck, and my hand came off of it. And the truth is, I was trying to get my hand out of the way. We're pushing them down the deck, and the customer was on the other end pushing, and so all of a sudden, it's like I had a knot or something that was catching up, and it broke free, and my hand just shot that last inch and a half or two, because the band was very close, straight into the band. No wood behind me or anything, just sort of, maybe I was trying to pull my hand away or something, and it just hit the band just like that. And it wasn't even hard. It was not real fast, not real hard, just kind of went like this, and my hand probably was open like that. I got a hitchhiker thumb, so, and it just hit one tooth. Stationary tooth, not moving. If it was moving, it would have cut my thumb off, and I wouldn't have been there, to be honest with you. Come on, folks. If you're anywhere near a moving band, rethink your priorities. So all I did, just hit a tooth, and it cut right through that leather glove, completely through it, and just scratched the end of my thumb, and it bruised it a little bit. The wood wasn't against my hand when it happened, but I guess I had just enough momentum as I was kind of pulling away that it hit the tooth. Without gloves, would have cut my hand open. Absolutely would have cut it. Would have cut my thumb wide open. Maybe not a stitches kind of scenario, but definitely some super glue. Duct tape and super glue. You know, so if you wear gloves when you're moving logs, when you're pulling the lumber off the deck, off bearing, we call it out here, some call it a tail gunner. But if you're moving lumber around, you know, running the mill itself, and you've got gloves on, your hands are protected from basic scratches and cuts and things that you would get otherwise if you didn't have gloves on. If you're going to be working around something moving, well, you're not running a sawmill because there's nothing on this mill that's going to be moving when you need to work around it. Simply nothing. Don't get your hands around a moving anything on a sawmill. Shut everything down first. I used to work in a pulp mill, and if you weren't wearing gloves, you were in trouble, except maybe in certain circumstances. I worked in the wood plant. That meant running a shovel, running a front end loader, running a chainsaw, all that kind of stuff in a damp, wet environment with lots of moving equipment. So you had a lockout procedure that you did, and you carried a bunch of locks with you at all times. And if you had to get into a moving piece of equipment, you had to shut it down and then lock it out, lock out, tag out. You lock it out with your tag so that if something happened, they knew who locked it out and who tagged it, and nobody else could start it without you being there to unlock it and untag the piece of equipment. So we don't do that on the sawmill, obviously, but the point is you don't use your gloves around moving objects, but you can wear gloves and run a sawmill all day long, every day of the week. So there's my rant for the morning. That's the Jarhead's morning coffee rant. I got a few hours to do today, so I lubed up the mill last night. I just need to grease it up this morning, so I'm going to do that real quick, and then I'll get her fired up and get her warmed up and get a band on it, and then we'll get cracking, and I'll bring that to you. So hang in there, and we'll get cracking.